Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Monday night, and we obviously await the unveiling of the second edition of the College Football Playoff Rankings after Week 11 action. And I'm going to attempt to predict what the committee will unveil tomorrow night. So we'll look at last week's rankings and obviously factor in what happened over the weekend. Comments and questions are welcome there in the chat. We appreciate if you have made your way on over from the main channel over to SG1 at the Voice of College Football. I know it's a little cumbersome, a little confusing, and so forth, but we are trying a few things out. So Monday here at SG1 at the Voice of College Football. I left the link there on the community post on the main channel. So since we've got a couple calls coming in, let's go to those first. And I will let you know right out of the gate that obviously I've got my top 25 that actually makes sense. Check that out over in the main channel. Released that on Sunday. And I will tell you this, that I released a top 25 that actually makes sense. Got my jacket out. It's 50 degrees tonight. 50! I just went to the store. I had to bundle up. It's 50 degrees out there. Anyway, and so I released the top 25, and then something prompted me to look at it again and think, okay, Mark, we have an issue here. And the issue is that for the latest juncture in the season that I can ever remember or imagine, and I've been doing this top 25 for 6 or 7 years, something like that, that I could honor head-to-head all the way through. I could do it. And that usually gets screwed up for obvious reasons. Team A beats Team B beats C, but C beats A, and you can't honor the head-to-head across the board, so you just throw it out. And at least in those situations, you throw it out, and you only apply it where it's a direct correlation, a direct head-to-head matchup, and no other teams involved that's in the top 25 or considered for the top 25. But we are entering week 12, and I've got a string of teams lined up here, and I'm thinking I can order them reasonably. It's not like I'm going out of my way. And when I say head-to-head, honoring head-to-head, I'm not talking about taking a team that's 5-3 and elevating them over a 7-1 team because they won the game. No, I'm talking about with the same record. And you can do that with this clump of ACC teams that involves Miami, Virginia, and Louisville, with Notre Dame, that extends to USC, that extends to Michigan. And those are basically the teams that are involved in that situation. And I look at it and I thought, okay, by honoring head-to-head, I am really screwing up these rankings. So USC, for example, is being affected by this situation in the ACC in these games between Louisville and Miami Notre Dame. It made no sense. So I just blew up the head-to-head, said I got to rank these teams where they have earned their ranking. So check out the rankings over there. That is obviously what I believe should be the top 25. And what I really want to do this week is I want to rank every team in America. We do that during the off season. During the off season, I will rank all the teams following the national championship game. I rank 1 through 136 or whatever the number is this year. And then I also rank all the programs. That's a different deal. Team ranking for the particular year, program ranking for the overall program. Two completely different rankings, but I enjoy doing that. I would love to do that every week, rank every team, because I believe every team should be ranked. All right, let's get to the calls. And depending on the calls here, we may not even get to my committee predictions. We'll see.
Yes.
David, how you doing tonight?
How you doing, Mark?
Good.
Excellent. Good to see you as always. Want to talk a little bit about the rankings as you were about ready to get into. First of all, I have a question for you. A lot, and I know you put into one of the big things you put into your ingredients of your rankings is the schedule you played, obviously the wins that you have accumulated. One of the big things that some people have made the case for Indiana being ranked number one is their ability to go to Oregon and win the game and win in a fairly impressive fashion. I have to ask you this question, though. If Oregon and Texas played on a neutral field, what would the spread of that game be?
Oregon and Texas.
Yes. I think you know where I'm going with this.
Field. I do now. It took me a
Oh,
second. I do now.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think Oregon would be a very slim favorite.
Okay.
Maybe a 2.5 to 3.5 point favorite.
Okay. Okay.
That would be my guess.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think within 3 points, I could see Oregon being favored. Yeah. I could see. I think you're about right. 2 or 3. I think you're within that area, so that's fine.
Yep.
So I guess my point being is the gap of difference between the data point that's given. Now, I guess that a lot of the people that are defending Indiana for being number one would also say what they did to Illinois in an impressive fashion. Are you hearing that from the people that are making the case for Indiana being number one, that it's not only the win at Oregon, but it's also the destruction of Illinois?
Oh, yeah. RG3 came out a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And said that Indiana is number one on his ballot simply because they beat Illinois by 53 and Ohio State only beat them by 18, which I think is ludicrous. I think that's ridiculous to look at one game, say that is the basis of my ranking differentiation between these two teams. We now have a Penn State game, ironically, to compare the two teams by.
There you go.
Played back to back.
Mm-hmm.
I will also say that in a lot of these arguments, you can't have it both ways. And a lot of people wouldn't necessarily consider Iowa to be some great football team, but they, in many ways, outplayed Oregon, many ways outplayed Indiana. And both teams are not lucky, fortunate to get out of there with a win.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. Now, I mean, Ohio State has had, I would say, one competitive game so far this year. Obviously, it was the first game of the year.
Yes.
Now, Indiana has had their one competitive game so far this year, which was obviously, we know what that was at Penn State.
Yep.
I don't know, Mark. I take a look at it. Maybe the Washington win is losing its luster after this week, by the way. I'm going to have to say a little bit, though, too. But I don't see this huge gap. I think the only people that are really making this case for Indiana to be number one is based on that point differential with the Illinois game. But I think you make a good point, too. Isn't that somewhat negated by Ohio State's Penn State result versus Indiana's Penn State result? So, I don't know. Do you have some other data points there that I might be missing?
Well, I think it's interesting that we can compare either the road we're on right now, the direct Illinois comparison, the direct Penn State comparison, which now has to be factored in. If you're going to go that route so strongly with this Illinois game being the difference between 53 and 18, so that's a 35-point differential in Indiana's favor, which anybody who talks like that is so ridiculous if you're shaving it down to point differentials. Indiana did annihilate them. Ohio State merely controlled the game and won very methodically, but we're never threatened. And then you flip it around. Ohio State, though, has never been threatened the way Indiana was last week against the Penn State team that is 0-6 in the Big Ten. Ohio State played a close game on the scoreboard, as you well know, against Texas, but they were never threatened in that game. I heard Joel Klatt mention that the other day. He said, I was calling the game. The game was never in doubt. Yes, technically it was in doubt. Anytime it gets to 14-7, there could be a play that would be made that would be a crazy play. But Ohio State controlled the game. They had control of the game. It was not a comfortable win. It was they had gained control. Indiana had no such thing against Penn State, obviously.
That's true. I mean, I would stipulate, though, if a team has the ball across midfield with a minute left in the game and down 14-7,
yeah,
that's still a very competitive football game.
It's threatening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's threatening because, I mean, anything can happen. A defensive back slips, a PI, that's still one play away with that team having the ball. So
sure.
I agree with you, though. The Penn State game was much more in doubt because they had to convert in the red zone there to win it. You know what I mean? Or they lose. So,
sure.
Let me ask you this question. Right.
Which Penn State,
Who
obviously.
to you was the most impressive team?
I'm sorry. We've got a lag going on again here, so we're just going to be stepping on each other. So let me just make one point about Penn State. I thought that the play calling late in that game was, I think you start conservative when you're protecting a lead. You got a young quarterback. I get all those things. You're trusting your defense. You got Katron Allen. He's one of the best. He's got to be one of the best 4-minute to close out a ball game backs in the nation. And you lean in that direction. But the play call, I argued with our Indiana guy on Twitter about this back and forth, and I don't know that he was getting my point because I was giving all credit to Indiana to win the game, obviously, but also stating I don't know that Andy Kotelnicki is really earning his money when on 3rd and 10 after running Katron Allen twice into the middle of the line with over 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
That he's throwing a bootleg. I went back and watched the play just to make sure of how far that ball was thrown. So they design a bootleg to a tight end. We're not talking about like Percy Harvin getting the ball to a tight end. And you know where they threw that ball, David? He caught that ball 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That play is designed to get a first down.
Yeah.
That's a terrible play call.
Further proof that the problem and the downfall of Penn State, in as much as people put it on Drew Aller, might be on Andy Kotelnicki as a bad offensive coordinator this year, by the way, too.
He has been many times. And you're 0-5 in the conference. Go for it. Show us something. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I'm hearing you.
And I had people on here. It was funny. I was getting comments to the video I produced that were accusing me of rooting for Penn State because I was so upset about the play calling, and I was upset about a few other gaffes late in the game. And I was trying to let them know, if anything, I picked Indiana to win. I picked them to cover. I was not rooting for Penn State. I get more upset. I don't get upset in this day and age by game results, hardly ever. I get more upset by scheduling in the sport and late game decisions that I think are not the best, things like that.
That's true. By the way, our friend Darrell would like to chime in if he may.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Darrell.
I'm shocked you're burying the lead, David, about the news that happened today.
Did you want to talk Major League Baseball? Is that where you were going to go, Darrell?
No, obviously not. But that is crazy what happened there. The evil empire, Emperor Palpatine of the sport, Greg Sankey, went to his podium and declared 6 to 8 SEC teams are going to make the playoffs this year.
I think there's a word called math, and I don't see that adding up to real. I have to be real with you.
You don't see Missouri and Tennessee making the college football playoff?
Even Mark's shocked, by the way. Even Mark is.
What Greg Sankey has said, by the way, today. I'm not making this up.
Missouri on Saturday.
Yeah. No, I okay. Go ahead, Darrell.
Obviously, I don't believe 8 SEC teams can make the playoff. It's completely insane to think a 9-3 Tennessee and Missouri is going to make the playoff. But listen, 7's still alive, guys. 7's still alive because no 10-2 team's going to be left out, and there's 7 SEC teams with mathematical chance at 10-2. Maybe a few of those at 9-3 make it in. So,
I still think 10-2 Oregon makes it. So I think that there's your chance to have 3 Big Ten teams.
Maybe.
I still think 10-2 Oregon makes it. I think as long as they split USC and Washington, I think they get in. I think they get in. I still think right now, I think that the SEC could get 5, maybe 6. Six would be really pushing it. 5 is still might be pushing it because I have doubts that Texas is going to split Georgia and A&M, as we talked about before. Pardon me.
I get that, man, but listen, if I've got to ask you this question: who are you
Sure.
leaving out?
Well, go ahead, Mark. Did you have a opinion?
Well, I was just going to say, so to real, if 7 teams in the SEC go 10-2, I'll give you a clear path in the ACC and the Big 12 just to say 1 each there. Okay.
G5 as well.
And the G5. Notre Dame is 10-2. Oregon goes 11-1. What's our, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7 that makes 13. So you're saying all 7 out of the SEC would go over Notre Dame?
Yes, all 7 of them have a better resume than Notre Dame.
Hold on.
I'm not necessarily debating that. I just don't know if the committee should be and is supposed to be judging these teams regardless of conference, just not saying, okay, well, too many from the SEC, not enough from the Big Ten. They're not supposed to be doing that.
Hey, Mark, can I throw out, does Notre Dame get a data point this week by beating Pitt? Pitt being ranked, I believe, 23rd in the rankings this week, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be a possible data point? Remember, Darrell, remember how the SEC used to have like a team that would slip in at like 24, 25, 23 there, and we could say, oh, that's a top 25 win. You know what I mean? So maybe.
David, do you know Pitt's final 3 games?
I have not seen the rest of their schedule.
Let me explain it to you. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Miami. 0-3. They're going to finish 7-5.
Okay. I think they get one of those 3. By the way, I think they can go 8-4. I think that I would not be surprised to see them get Miami. I think Miami right now might be close to a tailspin. And you think Georgia Tech is fraudulent, by the way. So
let's say they finish 8-4. They're not going to be ranked in the college football playoff at 8-4.
Okay.
No.
Yeah,
the ACC is so bad. I'm not even joking. There's a very plausible scenario if they don't even get a team in. That's how bad it is. Duke is second favorite to win the conference right now.
I still think 10-2 Notre Dame's in good shape. I just do. I think that
is the tragedy for the sport. If Notre Dame at 10-2 makes it, especially if Miami finishes 10-2, then why are we playing the games? Honestly, the SEC should just disband as a conference, schedule a bunch of cream puff ACC bottom Big 10 teams, some Big 12 teams, and call it a day. How about we win some games, folks? Your best win is against a 7-5 Pitt team and a 7-3, probably 9-3 Navy team. Ridiculous.
Hey, maybe their best win is a moral victory by staying within 1 point of the number 3 team in the country on their
moral victories.
Home field. Maybe they are so blessed to be able to stay within 1 point of such a great Texas A&M team.
David, what if I said last year, man, Ohio State got that moral victory over Michigan? They stayed within 3 points of them.
It would be interesting to see what this committee, let's take Texas, for example, if they would not have scheduled the Ohio State game and they would have scheduled another cream puff, won the game by 30, what is Texas right now? 8-2, 7-2, 7-2.
What would a 10-2 versus a 9-3 SEC team be?
Exactly.
They're not in the playoffs at 9-3. What you're telling them is, hey, you should never schedule high leverage games again. That's what you're telling them, because an 11-1 Texas team or a 10-2 Texas team would no doubt make the college football playoffs. Yeah, and if I don't believe that, the players and coaches certainly will.
Well, let's be real though. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, their 2 losses are by a combined 4 points. One of them is to the number 3 team in the country. Now, I agree. I think the downslide of Miami may also be hurting Notre Dame here a little bit too. Now, their best win will be probably, let's say, over a 9-3, top 20, probably top 20. If USC finishes 9-3, I think they're a top 20 team. Isn't that fair?
Sure.
So that will be their best win. Now, if you want to say that that's all bad, and their second best win's an 8-4 Pitt team, or what was it? Maybe beating Navy. Mark, is that going to be their second best win after USC?
Take a pick: Navy, Boise State.
Yeah.
Should it matter when
NC State or Arkansas?
When you're beating Navy 49-10 and Navy can't beat anyone else, you pretty much know that. Does that win really matter that much?
It don't. And to me, Mark, your point about I don't know Notre Dame is significantly better than those ACC teams. I don't know that because the only result I have is they went to a 2-loss ACC team and they lost by 3 points. I assume Notre Dame is playing that way. But there's also the argument, well, they're playing these bad teams and destroying them. Maybe these teams are just that bad as well.
They got a data point against NC State, who's what, 5-4?
Yeah, and almost lost to East Carolina.
They crushed NC State. They lost to Miami. They usually play 5 of these games.
Florida State, right?
No, they didn't play Florida State. They got Stanford. They got Stanford at the end.
That's right. My bad.
Pitt and
Boston College.
Boston College. Oh, yes, this sterling 25-10 win. Yes.
Right. They played the bottom of the ACC. They played none of the top teams in the ACC. I don't know. I believe they are, but I can't definitively prove they're better than Virginia or Louisville. Now, I think they are, and the play on the field suggested, but who have they beaten that is significantly better than what Virginia and Louisville have beaten this year?
I would be it.
Yeah, USC would be it, yes.
Maybe. Is USC
right, I agree with you, DeReal. Notre Dame is a brand name decision over Virginia and Louisville, other than the USC game, because I do think that USC is a really good football team.
I do too, but I don't. Who have they beaten? I understand we're doing some transitive profit there, but the Big Ten is so bad this year at the middle of
the top 15 teams in America. They're in that range.
I agree. I just want to see some wins about it.
USC beat Michigan, and you're going to ask me who Michigan beat. Well, Michigan beat Washington. I don't know who Washington beat.
Right. Washington's terrible. Washington's not a good football team.
I don't know if they're terrible.
They're a 40th. If they were in the SEC and they played Arkansas this week, it's a toss-up game for me.
Well, okay, maybe, but you're doing what you're accusing others of doing when you just made that. You don't have any way to make that connection between Washington and the SEC.
What I do, that's correct. But what I do know is good teams don't go out there, or decent teams go out there and lose to Wisconsin, who is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and certainly a lower fourth of Power 4 football. So I know there's a hard ceiling on them.
I mean, and Texas goes to Florida and loses to a team that fires their coach. So it looks bad in doing so. I agree. But what I would say would help USC, or would help Notre Dame, is if USC does go 10-2, then the win also looks a little bit better than it does too. I mean, if USC does go to Oregon and win, I'm not necessarily confident that they're going to do so. But let's say they do, because I think they could just as easily lose to both Iowa and to Oregon. But yeah, I think that the issue that we've talked about with the Big Ten is that we overrated Illinois. We overrated Penn State. There were a couple of teams that were probably very overrated this year. And I think that that's what's kind of hurt that middle portion of the conference.
Right. And all these bubble teams outside of Oregon have lost their major game as well as hurt them. And it should hurt them. Like a 9-3 Oklahoma should get in over a 10-2 Michigan, in my opinion, because they played on the field.
Yes. And so, David, when you make that statement, and I agree with you, the anticipated good teams in the Big Ten, the two that you mentioned, Illinois and Penn State, were disappointments. But if the Big Ten is getting the job done outside of the conference, then those teams should have been displaced by two other teams that we didn't expect to be. So
Indiana would be that team, Mark. Indiana would be that team. Indiana pretty much just – well, no. Like the season that Indiana's having is kind of the season that some people thought Penn State might have back in August, is what I'm saying.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, I'm going to get going. It's a good discussion. I can't wait for the rankings to come out, and Notre Dame, just their massive, impressive win over Navy. They're going to be number 9 in the country, probably. I mean, who else out there can beat Navy by 39 points? I honestly can't think of 8 schools, so we're obviously all happy the committee's doing it, right?
Making a lot of friends in South Bend there, Darrell. Making a lot of
I
friends.
just speak the truth. I can't help that the Notre Dame chooses to play a bunch of cupcakes every single year and is afraid to go to an actual conference. Okay, maybe if they had a 13th data point, maybe then I would be able to judge them. But you know what? Because they're scared to join a conference, I can't do anything about it.
I'll give you that. Me and Mark agree on that. Get in a conference, right, Mark?
Get in a conference, and we're bringing in the right person for the discussion here. We got Notre Dame fan Rob. And Rob, good to see you here. And I will pull up the rankings from last
Rob,
week.
I'm defending you here, buddy. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know about that. I'd say there was a great piece I saw on Reddit, on college football Reddit, and I wish I had it pulled up to. And it was someone that's a Notre Dame hater, but he said, "You know what? I hate Notre Dame as much as the next guy, but he's like, I'm going to defend Notre Dame in their independence." And he goes on, like, he puts this list of, like, this long list of all the reasons why Notre Dame should be independent, and not just the tradition.
Sense?
What's that?
Did any of them make any sense?
Yes, I'll pull up the article, not tonight because I don't have it handy, but I'll pull it up and maybe go over it on one of the next shows. But it's a really well written article, and this is, again, it's not an article, it's a Reddit post, but and it got upvoted beyond belief by not just Notre Dame fans, but a lot of the college football fans that are on that Reddit.
I could write an article on why Notre Dame should be independent based on Notre Dame's benefits in being independent. I could certainly write that article.
No, it's not it's not just about Notre Dame's point of view, though. It's about some of the things that are being lost. Like, one of the points he brings up is all the things that are being lost in college football, and tradition, certain traditions that are going by the wayside, and Notre Dame's independence, while constantly under attack, is one of the last things that we have to look at as far as, like, a standing tradition. And
the last vestiges, the last vestiges of college football.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
And
I think that's a pretty weak point, but
no, I'll bring up the post at some point. I can go over some of the better, some of the points that are written in it. But anyways, to get back to this ridiculous notion that Notre Dame doesn't seem like, the Real was saying, oh, I don't know if Notre Dame is better than this or that. Okay. So if we're talking up Texas A&M as the greatest thing since sliced bread, they're number 3 in the country. Lots of people are saying they should be number 1. They should jump Indiana after last week's performance. That's fine. I don't have anything against Texas A&M, but Notre Dame choked that game away and lost by 1 point to that team that's supposedly so great. But we have no idea if Notre Dame can play with these supposedly top dogs in college football, right? Well, give me a break. These are some of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard.
Well, it's not that Texas A&M so great, but they have gone through the rest of its schedule undefeated.
Right. But I'm not saying that you're saying Texas A&M is the greatest thing ever, but lots of sports analysts, ESPN, this and that, they're all saying Texas A&M has one of the best strength of schedules, and they're undefeated, and they're the SEC number 1 and all this. They should be number 1 in the country. Like, I'm just saying, as a point of data, if Notre Dame can play them within 1 point, and honestly, they should have at least tied that game, gone in overtime. If Tyler Buckner doesn't make a boneheaded play, and then if they call that egregious holding, anyways, I'm not going to make excuses. We lost the game, but my point is this: Notre Dame was in that game, kind of choked it away a little bit, and the season would look a little bit different if that hadn't happened. But the point is, they're obviously a team that can play with at least, the quote unquote number 3 team in the country.
I guess the Real's point, and I get it. So if you're just asking me who the best teams are, I'm not comparing those teams in the ACC to Notre Dame. But if we're just looking at data, meaning results on the field, we had one of those teams, Louisville, beat Miami, and obviously Miami beat Notre Dame. And like, we don't have a reason to think. We don't have a direct correlation there. We don't have Notre Dame beating Virginia. We don't have Notre Dame beating any of the top teams in the ACC. They had one shot against the ACC's upper crust, and they lost. That's kind of the point.
Rob, may I ask Rob a question, please?
Yeah.
Rob, and maybe you've already answered this, but I haven't heard your answer to this question. If Texas were to split Georgia and Texas A&M, and they were to beat an undefeated Texas A&M, do you believe Texas's 9-3 resume is worthy of getting in over Notre Dame at 10-2?
So I would probably say yes if they beat Georgia. I mean, A&M again. I don't think A&M is truly like. Yes, they're ranked number 3 in the country right now. I was only using them as like a data point for defense of my argument purposes, but
Okay.
I think A&M is a good team, a very good team, but
Yeah.
like that's still a game we should have won and we choked it away. So Texas beating A&M would be a very good win. I wouldn't be upset if they leapfrog Notre Dame. Do I think they should at that point? I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
They did lose to a horrible. Like they have a worse loss than anything we have by far. Like losing to Florida was horrible. But they did. The problem with that is you can't really punish Texas for scheduling an out of conference game like Ohio State. So
That's
their third loss would be to the presumed at this point in time, at least the number 1 team in the country. So are we going to punish them for doing that? I don't think we should. So if the committee decided that Notre Dame would be the sacrificial lamb and get Texas in, that's fine. I mean, like I said, I can't be mad if Notre Dame gets bumped out because they choked that game away against Texas A&M. So they lost, any chance to control their own destiny. Now, do I think, if you're asking me right now, the way these two teams are playing, do I think Texas is better than Notre Dame right now? No, I don't.
Okay.
I
would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's. Yeah, so
I think that's
No.
a toss-up. I would have no idea who would win that game.
I think I would say Notre Dame is a legitimate top 10 team. I think, I've watched Notre Dame play about 4 or 5 times this year. I think they have a really well-balanced offense. Rob, is it fair to say that you've traded better quarterback play for a worse defense from a year ago?
That's just it. And that's the big reason why I think Notre Dame it deserves to be in the top 10, not necessarily because of what they earn on the field, but just their ability to play. Like their defense has improved vastly since basically the second half of that Purdue game.
Okay.
It took Chris Ash a few games to get it together. Like he came into a new team. He lost some key pieces from when Al Golden went to the NFL. Obviously Riley Mills and Howard Cross and some other, like Xavier Watts, losing him and Jack Kaiser were the defensive linchpins, the captains. They had the most experience. So it took a little bit for Notre Dame's defense to get it rolling, but they've been a really good defense since, like I said, probably the second half of that Purdue game. They're very good at stopping the run. And if you look at the analytics, and even the BCS has Notre Dame as a top 10 team right now. So for people saying Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be in the top 10, analytically, they're top 5 in many stats. They're top 10 in the BCS if we were using the old BCS system right now. So, like I said, do I think they deserve to be based on their resume in terms of like what wins they have? Like USC was a good win. It's not incredible. So obviously Notre Dame fans are rooting for USC to kind of run the table at this point. And we have some transitive wins we don't really use, right? Like, NC State beat Georgia Tech. We beat them. We crushed them. Whatever. It doesn't matter. All that matters is, and this is what's going to annoy people, Notre Dame is likely going to be in as long as they don't slip up. And so, people can be mad and they can yell and Notre Dame doesn't deserve it, this or that. Notre Dame doesn't care. I mean, I don't care just from the fact that, like, if people want to have a problem with Notre Dame being in the top 10, I don't mind if they have a problem with it, because again, we messed those games up in the beginning of the season. But if you're going to ask me who I think, if Notre Dame is a top 10 quality team, it's a no-brainer to me. I mean,
I agree. Yeah. I just want to stipulate that. I've watched them enough to say that they're worthy of being a top 10 team. And, I think they have one of the better balanced offenses in the country. I think Carr's playing really well. And then I think arguably you have the best pair of backs on one team in the country in Price and Love. So,
it's difficult to argue the best 3 wins on each team's schedule.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at Texas defeating Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Vandy, and Notre Dame defeating USC, Pitt, and somebody, Navy, that's a difficult comparison to make in Notre Dame's favor.
Last thing that could hurt you, Rob, though, is what if multiple ACC or multiple Big 12 teams get in? I think that could be maybe a fly in the ointment there too, possibly.
I don't think we're going to see multiple ACC teams get in, to be honest. I think the more likely scenario is that somehow maybe if BYU and Texas Tech have a rematch and BYU beats Texas Tech and there's 2 Big 12 teams or something like that, but I don't see the ACC getting 2 teams in at this point. They've kind of cannibalized themselves quite a bit there.
That's true.
I mean, anything's possible, I guess, but I don't like Pitt would have to go on a run for that to happen, I think.
Yeah, in the Big 12, the loser of the championship game is going to have at least 2 losses. So
that's true.
They're not going to get a second team in now with BYU losing this week.
Right. The hope was to get to BYU there undefeated and then somebody knock them out. Right.
And just to be clear, I'm making a comparison between a 10-2 Texas team and a 10-2 Notre Dame team because to me, Texas, even at 9-3, would have the better wins, but I can't let the Florida game slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. If Texas goes 10-2, then absolutely. Like, and again, even if they go 9-3, depending on the nature of the 9-3, like I would be okay with Texas sliding in over Notre Dame at that point. If they find a way to beat Georgia, now that would be a lot more impressive than, in my opinion. Like I think Georgia's a better team than A&M, and
but then they get a loss against Tech. You know, when
it's the
you're
closing.
You're trading wins and losses, so in a sense, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, they beat Georgia. Like if you think, which I don't necessarily think Georgia's that much better, if at all better than Texas A&M, but let's say they are. Let's say Georgia is one of the 5 best teams in the country, and Texas A&M, I don't know that we can in any way put them below 10. So I don't know where the separation is, but anyway, that Texas beats Georgia. But obviously, if you have less regard for Texas A&M, then Texas loses that game, which it's a good win and a good loss regardless, as long as it's close as a loss.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Notre Dame. So there was some other points that he said, like Virginia this or that. Like if you look at like wins, like look at the way Notre Dame dismantled Arkansas versus how it took Ole Miss down to the wire. It took A&M down to the wire. It took what was the other team that struggled against Arkansas? There was like 3 Tennessee almost. Yeah, Tennessee. So like there's like a kind of a data point that you can use, but also Notre Dame's losses to me are just like, they lost to A&M, but again, that was kind of a game that they really should have at least gone into overtime, and who knows what happens there. Now the Miami game was just, that like I said, I'm not going to make too many excuses about losses, but those losses were competitive losses. I mean, they could have easily gone another way.
They're as competitive as can be.
Right.
They are just about as competitive as can be. 1 point, blowing a PAT and a walk-off field goal on the road.
Yeah. So, I mean,
unfortunately for you, obviously, Miami is not helping.
In the backslide of Miami, it continues probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Miami is crystal balling right now in November.
Yes.
That's kind of the.
Well, I would say Carson Becking, if you want to go there too. A little bit, Rob.
Crystal Ball's got a longer history of doing this than Carson Beck does. So I'll say it's crystal balling. It's his responsibility, not Carson Beck's.
Well, Beck's thrown some bad picks there, Mark, that haven't exactly been good.
Responsible for the football team. It's Mario Cristobal's football program, and he's been doing this. His November record is atrocious. True. And really, if the only thing that's saved Miami is they've played 2 of the worst teams in captivity in Syracuse and Stanford in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's and that's the thing. Like I'm excited for this week because for Pitt, like I'm less excited about Notre Dame, but game day is going to be at Pitt, and that's going to be. I was listening to a Pitt broadcast the other day, and they were like they were so happy. They're like, this is going to help us like financially, like the town, like it's going to bring people in, and it's a good thing to have those eyeballs on Pitt because they've been struggling. But I'm excited for that game because Pitt's sneaky dangerous right now, and if Notre Dame overlooks them. Like they overlooked Boston College. See, I never brought this up, but there was a press conference with Marcus Freeman where somebody asked him about Boston College, and he briefly, made a mention that he had already been planning and prepping for Navy before the Boston College game. And I think that was very apparent when they played Boston College because it was almost like they were completely overlooking them. I don't think they're going to do that with Pitt because Pitt is obviously playing pretty good ever since they changed their quarterbacks. So. They better not overlook that game. That's all I'll say.
And that may well, in fact, have happened. But if anybody evaluates Notre Dame more highly or anyone because they think they looked past somebody, then that person should be booted from any committee.
That's true.
Oh, no. You don't make these assumptions that, they were looking past. Now, see, the Boston College game, I don't really mark that against Notre Dame. I don't mark it in their column either. It's just kind of, to me, because sure, it was ugly at 25-10, and I didn't watch the game. So correct me if I'm wrong. Notre Dame was never threatened in this game. It took them a while to break free in terms of having a lead, but it's not like BC had the ball in the red zone down 4 on the final drive of the game. It's not like they were threatened. They just looked bad.
Yeah, it was just a very lethargic. It was just a very ugly game.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't your typical. Yeah,
Like Ohio State beating Northwestern a couple of years ago, like 17-6.
Yeah,
Right.
basically. Yeah.
Last point on Georgia, Texas, by the way, it'll be interesting to see if Texas plays them close in Athens, how much they fall back in the polls, let's say with a close loss, and then they get A&M at the end of the year. See, my case is that last data point, and they get a chance to play an undefeated A&M, and they knock A&M out from the ranks of being undefeated. That would be a good closing argument for them. So it would be interesting to see, though, again, if they lose at Georgia, if it's a close game, how much they fall back after that. I would make that last point on kind of their argument there.
Well, I will say this for Texas. Arch Manning, if we're just going by the last game that he played, he looks a lot better than he did in the beginning of the year. So that does give me a little bit of hope going forward in these bigger games that Texas has coming up, like Georgia and A&M. So I'm more confident in Texas now because, look, one thing about Texas that hasn't really changed is they've still got a really good defense.
Yes.
Right? So they can play with anybody defensively. It's just a matter of is that offense going to wake up and actually do something to help them out? And if now obviously the Vanderbilt comeback notwithstanding against that defense,
and
ridiculous.
Mississippi State and Florida would also beg to differ as well a little bit there, Rob.
Yeah. Well, they have their defense hasn't always been, but it is a defense that can play with anybody.
They have talent.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I honestly do think they're going to lose both of those games. Sorry, Texas fans, I'm not trying to pick on you. I don't see Texas winning those games, but I could be wrong, and we'll see how that goes. Going forward.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you both, Rob. It was a pleasure to kind of talk college football with you, my friend. Mark, it's always a pleasure to talk to you as well, sir.
Of course, David. Thanks for being here, man.
Yep, and hoping Notre Dame and Ohio State and all the teams that we like take care of business. So I'll go ahead and get off now.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
All right, see you.
So yeah, let's run through this here. So this is last week's rankings. And let's take a quick shot at this. And I will not pretend to be as good as I should be or as good as I used to be at this when I really was locked in on this all day and knew and had a thought process toward what is the committee thinking? What are they showing us? I couldn't even have told you what the college football playoff rankings were before I pulled them up here off the top of my head. I probably would have gotten pretty close on the top 15. But anyway, so Ohio State beat Purdue by 24 points. They're going to stay number 1. The next question, or the first question, would be, what does the committee do with Indiana versus Texas A&M? Do they penalize Indiana? And of course, we know that the committee, as I jot this down, the committee is going to spin it however they want to, meaning if they flip-flop them, they're going to say, well, Texas A&M was a really close 3 to Indiana's 2, and they may well have been. It may have been a tough decision for them to rank Indiana over Texas A&M last week. We have no idea, unless they were asked that question. On the other hand, they may have had Indiana substantially higher than Texas A&M. So they're weighing a Texas A&M win, and I know Mizzou does not get a whole lot of love, but they're a good football team. Mizzou is fill in the blank. Illinois, caliber, if you want to relate it to the Big Ten, and probably Mizzou's like 3 or 4 teams in the Big 12 near the top. So that was a dominant win by Texas A&M. So Texas A&M did not win the game by 1 score. They won by 3 touchdowns over Mizzou, a team that was ranked by the committee at 22 in the country. And Indiana slopped around and won by a whisker over a team that is now 3-6. I really have no idea what the committee's going to do. I just outlined how they're going to spin it once they unveil it. But let's say they take Texas A&M based on a strong win against a strong opponent, and Indiana a weak win against a weak opponent. And we can go into Penn State's loaded with talent and all that. They are. And they're a worthy opponent. They're still they're not a good team in regards to results, but they're a team to be reckoned with. So Texas A&M could be number 2 next tomorrow night, and Indiana 3. Alabama's going to stay at 4. Georgia's going to stay at 5. Bama, of course, beat LSU by 11, and Georgia beat Mississippi State by 20. Ole Miss played the Citadel. They, of course, won that game. They're at 6. BYU. Okay, let's put them off to the side. They got trampled by Texas Tech. I believe that final score was 29-7. So BYU is going to take a tumble. Texas A&M should make its way at least to number 7. So if they stay in order, Texas Tech will go up to number 7. Or does the committee really weigh this BYU win by Texas Tech by 22 points and start to make comparisons between Texas Tech and Ole Miss? There is a possibility that Texas Tech could go to 6 and drop Ole Miss to 7. So that's our second key point. Again, Indiana, Texas A&M comparison, Ole Miss, Texas Tech comparison, and also Oregon. How do you rate this Iowa win? A lot of people have great respect for Iowa. A lot of people, not so much. We know that Iowa's played 2 excellent football teams this year, and they took them both down to the wire. They lost both of those games, but they took them down to the wire. So is this an excellent win by Oregon, or is it an ugly win by Oregon, barely getting by Iowa, a 6-3 football team? You know, Texas A&M squashed Mizzou. Oregon squeaks by Iowa on the final play of the game. Both games on the road. I think because Oregon was not dominant, they're not going to eclipse Texas Tech, since Texas Tech obviously record-wise beat a better team than Oregon did and did it in a dominant fashion. So Oregon should stay right where they're at, well, they're going to move up a spot because of BYU, but meaning in this order, they're going to stay in the same place. Then you got Notre Dame annihilating Navy by 39. They would stay at 10. Again, we still have BYU on the side at 8-1. Let's keep them right there. I think they're going to take a tumble because their wins are pretty weak, other than Utah. Then we've got Texas. Texas did not play. So we got Texas at 10. Oklahoma did not play. They're at 11. Utah did not play, correct? They're at 13. Let's move them up to 12. But Utah lost to BYU. So BYU still has a better record than Utah, and they beat them. So you got to think that BYU slides in here at 12. And then we've got Utah at 13. All right, Virginia lost. Let's put them off to the side. They're going to take a tumble. They lost to Wake Forest, who's 6-3. So Virginia is now 8-2. Louisville lost to a Cal team that is now 6-4. So those are fairly bad losses, not horrendous losses, but not good losses. And so Virginia and Louisville will take a tumble. Vanderbilt beat Auburn. Auburn's not a good football team. Record-wise, talented football team. They could have won every game they played this year. So that's a good win for Vandy in my book, but it's not impressive. They won in overtime. They trailed much of the game. So I don't see Vandy jumping that high based on that win, to be compared to Utah, a team that was 4 spots ahead of them, 3 spots ahead of them. I think Vandy slots in at 14. Then we've got Georgia Tech, who did not play. So let's keep Georgia Tech at number 15 at 8-1. Miami beats Syracuse by 4 touchdowns. They're now at 7-2. USC beat Northwestern. That's a better win than Miami's win against Syracuse, but it wasn't as dominant, and really Northwestern's not that much of a factor. So Miami, you got to think, is going to stay at 16, and USC at 17. Now you've got Iowa. How much does the committee penalize Iowa for a loss against a team that they were supposed to lose to in the most narrow of fashions? I would not be surprised if the committee just completely knocked Iowa off the rankings, which is stupidity to me. They played the number 8 or 9 team in the country down to the final play of the game. So I don't know what they're going to do with Iowa at 6-3, but to me, I think I have them ranked 21 in the country. There's Michigan at 21. So now we start to make comparisons between, let's say, Michigan at 7-2 versus Virginia at 8-2, Louisville at 8-2. I don't have it in my brain to be able to compare schedules between Michigan, Louisville, and Virginia, except that Virginia obviously won an overtime game straight up against Louisville. So I'm thinking at this point, Michigan obviously lost to better football teams, Oklahoma and USC, than Virginia and Louisville lost to. So I got to think that Michigan's going to be next at 18, then Virginia. Yeah, Virginia at 19 and Louisville at 20. Mizzou's gone, 6-3. Washington gone, 6-3. Pitt did not play. They're sitting at 7-2. Let's throw them at 21. Then I've got to think Iowa should be. If Iowa is 5 spots ahead of Tennessee, lost to Oregon on the last play of the game to drop their record to the same record as Tennessee, and they fall behind Tennessee, then I'm done with this committee. I am done. Then they are complete morons. So let's say Iowa's 22, and we will put Tennessee at 23 at this point. So we have knocked Mizzou and Washington out of the rankings. And who else do we have that could fill these spots? Anybody? I don't want to go to the standings, but I will here in a second. Who else do we have that could fill these spots? And then we've got our top 25. So we've got Navy, no. South Florida, possibly. Tulane, possibly. North Texas, despite 8-1, no. Memphis, 8-2, possibility. Okay. We've got SMU 7-3, possibility. SMU played. I am blanking on SMU's game this past weekend. I don't think they played, right? They beat Miami 2 weeks ago. I think they were off this past week. Okay, nobody else out of the ACC. Out of the Big 12, Cincinnati's a possibility at 7-2. Houston 8-2. I don't think 6-3 teams are going to get love out of the Big 12. we've got nobody out of the Big Ten. Maybe Nebraska 7-3, coming off a win against UCLA. But if you put Nebraska in the rankings at 7-3, Minnesota beat them by 3 touchdowns at 6-3. It's a bit iffy. Illinois at 6-3. Nobody there. UConn with a big win against Duke. Nobody in the MAC, of course. Then we've got a weak Mountain West in which its best team got blown out. And then we drop down to the SEC. Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas, Vandy, Oklahoma, all ranked. Tennessee ranked. Mizzou drops out of the rankings. LSU lost to Bama. So there are no teams that can fill that gap out of the SEC. So we're looking for 2 teams, basically, to jump into the rankings to take the places of Mizzou and Washington. So I got to think that those are American Conference teams. That's probably some combination of James Madison, Memphis, Tulane, Cincinnati, Nebraska. I don't think Houston. They're 8-2, but their resume is bad. All right, folks. It's my top 25 prediction for Tuesday night. 24-25. Again, I'm not going to try to sift through James Madison, Memphis, Tulane, Cincinnati, Nebraska, and Houston, but I would think that the final 2 spots come from those 2. Those 6, the final 2. Tennessee 23, Iowa 22, Pitt 21, Louisville 20. Actually, Iowa should be ranked ahead of Pitt. I would go, well, my top 25 is my top 25. That's what I would go. But my prediction is Tennessee 23, Pitt 22, Iowa 21, Louisville 20, Virginia 19, Michigan 18, USC 17, Miami 16, Georgia Tech 15, Vandy 14, Utah 13, BYU 12, Oklahoma 11, Texas 10, Notre Dame 9, Oregon 8, Texas Tech 7, Ole Miss 6, Georgia 5, Bama 4, Indiana 3, Texas A&M 2, Ohio State 1. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Tuesday night, we will get together as soon as the rankings are revealed over on the main channel. So again, Tuesday night over on the main channel as soon as the rankings are revealed, and we will see you then.